Kia ora, everyone. I am Sekou Skanden, chair of Canterbury Tech, and Louisa Taylor has asked me to do the MC today. Before we go on to the session, I'm going to do some of the few Canterbury Tech updates and introduce the speaker, the lovely Nina Oberg Humphries. She's gonna talk soon with us. And thank you to our annual sponsors today, UC Business School, Stratos, two of our biggest annual sponsors. And I've already told, I think by this time, Stratos and Canterbury Tech should get married. I'm still getting true to its messaging. And to our lovely supporters too, like Sitehorse, Ridiculously Digital, Integration Works, and Crescent Consulting. So thank you for supporting us for many of the sessions. And Stratos has been I think they're the business who works with the Microsoft, and the CEO, David Carter, has been a long-term supporter and committee member of Canterbury Tech. So we're happy to have their support as well. But if you want to sponsor us with our annual sponsors, you can write to us at info@canterburytech.nz, and we shall come up with you for more information. And this is a beautiful committee, and we are open to we are opening up 2 or 3 new committee members this year. So if you like to stand for elections in November, with a unique mix of building community and governance and getting to know people and contributing, just write to us the same email. And we're looking for business analysts and UX designers to assist with special projects, and software developers or technical leaders with strong, diverse networks or looking for wider networks, and accounting or treasurers, pitching and documenting process, and bookkeeping and emceeing and networking methods. We have some of the people who's really keen, but if you're wanting to get involved, email us. To the next slide, Louisa. Is there a reason why I'm only seeing what looks like the top corner of the screen? I think we can screen everyone's screen. What about you guys? Everyone is able to see? Thumbs up? Everyone's able to see the full screen? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, fine for me.
Cool. Okay, David, maybe check back again. It's working for all of us. Great. There's a lot of events that we are supporting. So please always subscribe to our newsletter and the events calendar. Oh, this is not refreshing actually. But I can walk you to this. So please subscribe to our events calendar in our website. So the first one, 24th to 25th October, Te Pai, is the NetSafe. It's an Australian summit about safety, online security, and digital. So it's not clearly visible here, but I can see it here. Just go and check it out. 24th, 25th, and 25th, we are having an online free webinar about circular economy led by Aracon for a consortium doing research for MBIE. So there's also a multi-core world happening. Early bird tickets are open, and the event is going to happen in Christchurch in February. It's a unique 5-day experience with about 200 world leaders in next generation computers, small group sessions under relaxed atmosphere. So yeah, come and join if you're both technical or business kind of thing. So now we're going to the important part of the afternoon. Nina is a proud second-generation New Zealand-born Cook Islander. She's also a multimedia artist, and Tawala, a director of Tagata Moana Trust. So Nina is devoted to connecting Moana people to ancestral knowledge through artifacts and Pacific heritage art forms as a place to propel Pacific peoples into STEAM vocations. I think I've been to one of her art exhibitions too, with a friend of mine, and it's such a joy to see some of the more Pacific artists and taking different forms and shapes. And she's amazing at what she does, but she's good at management, project design, strategy, community education, Pacific heritage material, and she's been a committed member of the Pacifica community in Otatahi. And she's a mother of 3, which feels like a full-time job in itself. Besides that, she also advocates for digital equity really vividly, and greater social outcomes for Pacific living in Aotearoa, which is an achievement in itself. And introducing Nina. Hi, Nina.
Kia rana.
Kia ora, kia ora.
From my cheeks, I use a cloth made by my grandmother's hands. I smell her scent. It reminds me of home, an island I have never been. It reminds me of home. My Cook Islands grandmother, Rangi Oberg, migrated to Aotearoa, New Zealand when she was 12 years old in 1942. Part of a government scheme to bring young Cook Islands women to New Zealand to help during the Second World War. She settled in Waipara with the McLeod family, which she always spoke fondly of. Growing up, she moved to Wellington, settled, met my grandfather, Norman Oberg, moved to Ōtautahi Christchurch, where they raised a family and ran a second-hand bookshop, Smith's Bookshop. She was a community leader, she was a community advocate, and she was one of the founding members of Pacifica Women's. She was sent by her mother, Ani Ki, to send home money to the family, leaving 6 younger siblings behind. She was 12 years old, going to a new land, but brave and courageous she did, because New Zealand offered opportunities and was seen as the land of milk and honey as life in the islands became increasingly more difficult to sustain through rapid globalization, tourism, and of course, the good old introduction of currency and money systems. She, like many others, came to New Zealand in a wave of labour shortages, where our government had actively gone out to the Pacific to invite communities to come with them and to come over here and to work. She was part of the 1940s during the Second World War. After that, we had a labour shortage in the 1960s and 50s, bringing over more and more Pacific peoples. During the 1970s, there was a number of uprisings, and particularly discrimination to Pacific peoples living here, as the government's idea of who it is they wanted to be in this country had changed, labouring us overstayers. They performed a number of dawn raids, effectively, where police would go and knock on doors or stop you in the street asking for papers and identification, along with visas and working permits. New Zealand has had a long history with Pacific peoples, with its first written accounts in 1860s, and we continue to have one today. We represent over 9% of the population. We are 40. We're the lowest medium age of 22, and we're the fastest growing demographic. Although these things, we're here and we're here to stay and we've been here a really long time, we also face a number of challenges, those being our economic situations, bringing in a medium income of $23,000. We see the poorest health outcomes for Pacific, along with living situations, yet we are the fastest growing and youngest population. It's not all doom and gloom, though. We've had many success stories, and we continue today. The biggest thing in our country is we celebrate and know how to celebrate our individual identities, and we keep that alive in multiple festivals throughout the country, and we represent this country on many world platforms, particularly in arts. Arts is where we thrive, representing New Zealand in the last Venice Biennale and Documenta in Pacific arts. When it comes to statistics in these areas, we thrive. And so it's important that we see ourselves in all places of our country, and we can do that through celebrating our own individual identities. Because identity and culture is a real in for our community, it's where we want to be, see ourselves, celebrate our own identities. It's a perfect opportunity for a way into our communities to be able to provide access to other vocations or other ideas or even aspirations of what our life could be. We came here with a particular interest of wanting to better our financial circumstances and our family situations back in the islands. And we really did see New Zealand as the place of opportunities to get greater education, greater healthcare, and it still is. And we do see ourselves engaging in many ways possible positively. However, during COVID-19, and we all have seen this in many ways, the digital divide and access to these systems became rapidly vast. We saw the huge number of Pacific peoples that don't have access to devices, don't have access to the internet, and virtually couldn't communicate during this time, and became even more isolated. This became very difficult to be able to celebrate your culture, your language and identity, where most of us find our refuge and our community. During this time, myself, along with Janai Yosefa at Christchurch City Libraries, decided to create an organisation that would help to bridge these gaps, or create a platform for our people to come and gather resources. This was Tagata Moana Trust. Based in Aotearoa, we do STEAM education through Pacific arts, language and culture. We dream big for our community. We're probably, when others think, when statistics will show negatively, we truly live in our abundance space, which is our language and our cultures. We created a number of programs for school kids, mainly aged between 10 and 13, trying to push them into STEAM education and hopefully then into vocations. We know that STEAM jobs represent the fastest growing industries, the highest paid industries, and if we want to see our communities change and really start living in the aspirations and way we move to this country, we need to be able to get our community into these jobs and to see them as potential careers. One of the biggest barriers is, like many things, is not seeing yourself. In the tech industry, we've got a few numbers where we roll around at 2.8, and then we've had some new data say 4.4% of the entire industry where Pacific peoples are represented. Who knows with those stats, like all stats, but we know that if we don't have people in these positions and working in these industries, we're least likely to see ourselves in them, and therefore see it as a place that we can thrive and engage. That's why culturally relevant and also community-driven programs are essential to seeing the upskill, but also the pathways into these industries as potential vocations. One of the things that we've seen with working in schools across the South Island was the rapid use of Minecraft in the classroom as a tool to teach multiple subjects. When we have a community that is first of all, doesn't have the access to technology, then doesn't have the literacy or the fluency to be able to use those devices. We have a community that doesn't have access to the internet as well. The place where they're learning these skills is in the classroom. And so it became even more important to be able to access these platforms that already exist and brokering them to be able to engage our communities. Many people try to engage with Pacific communities. Over the last couple of years in particular, it is we're all over the headlines, or we're all over funding pools to engage with us, so that we can get greater access to things and build skills. The issues that have arisen from that is the lack of our own community doing things for our own community, but also the mistrust, or the mistrust from our communities with industry or other providers that aren't our own. And so with this mistrust, and not seeing ourselves in these industries or in using these technologies, we really needed to, as a community, reflect on what kind of tools we could use to be able to propel our people into these jobs, but do it in a way that was that's culturally safe, that's culturally relevant, and builds confidence in our kids. When 40% of our communities speak their language, multiple Pacific languages, and 60% don't, and 69% of all Pacific people are born in Aotearoa, regardless of how strong we celebrate our language, our identities, and our cultures, we have a growing issue of being able to access, or even to hand down, our own intergenerational knowledge, our culture, and our identity for our kids. This is like anywhere else where we move from one place to the next. Do you assimilate, or do you, some people assimilate to get ahead, and we'll see it as you have to assimilate to get ahead. And then for others, they're much more staunch at holding what is true to their culture, or their cultural customs that don't necessarily fit into a Western way of thinking. These are all huge issues, but what can we as a community do to be able to provide greater platforms where we can learn about ourselves, but then build skills? Minecraft is a game that's used all over the world. There was an article this morning of apparently it's reached 300 million downloads. It's used all over the place, and it's very rapidly, if not already, becoming a child's right in terms of gaming. I don't know one kid or one parent that hasn't gone on to Minecraft, but also who hasn't been forced to buy a Minecraft t-shirt. We identified Minecraft as a way of being able to engage with our kids, particularly in the classroom, and provide a platform for them to learn about themselves. This was a project that was actually started by somebody else, and through multiple conversations, Tagata Moana Trust has pulled it up. So Moana Nui, Tautai Tour, is a Pacific Minecraft world developed for Pacific people, firstly, throughout New Zealand, that's centred in Aotearoa. So I myself, I'm a second generation New Zealand born Cook Islander. My worldview as a Pacific person is very different to the worldview of somebody that is born in the Cook Islands. And so I just want to be very clear about that when creating this world, that it is centered in from Aotearoa and then back out to the Pacific. So Minecraft is a sandbox game. Essentially, there's two modes that kids, adults, whoever, maybe even yourselves, work in. One is called creative mode, and the other one is survival mode. Essentially, you dig resources, combine them together to make all sorts of structures. In creative mode, and survival mode is all about trying to survive. So digging and collecting, hunting and gathering, keeping away from things that are called mobs that might affect your health or your well-being. So Minecraft, it's huge in terms of being used rapidly in the classroom, and if not, New Zealand is way behind in its usage in the classroom to be able to teach all sorts of subjects. The main one being engaging with technology and its possibilities. When creating Moana Nui, or we're still in creation mode, we had to consider lots of different things. There's 38 different Pacific countries. There's 205 different languages. We are from Aotearoa, New Zealand. And so we had to gather a group of so-called experts. We started with some academics that are in Christchurch that all have, the right qualifications in terms of doctorates and all things in Pacific arts, Pacific history, and museums, really how it is that we look at our material culture. We got together a panel of experts. There were 6 in total from Christchurch and then 2 from outside of the city. And we designed what we thought would be a good overview of Pacific culture. So in Moana Nui, we have represented 12 different nations, 12 different languages, and 12 different quests, where the player will go through, complete one quest. After that, move to the next quest, which is a series of activities that are all culturally based. The world itself is designed in pre-contact Pacific. Now, that's incredibly hard to think about, and a lot of it has been imagined because all of our, most of our knowledge that is still kept has been written about by missionaries and all sorts of things, and not necessarily our own communities keeping that knowledge for us to be able to use. And so we had to look at lots of different things, do lots of research around the plants that are used, the way that an island is formed, all different types of landscapes, and how it is that we would represent all of these different cultures and all of these different landscapes in a world that was tangible, that kids could engage with. So you see on the left-hand side here is an outline of the world. The world is made up of 12 different activities. Each activity, you move around from kind of hunting, gathering, go into a spiritual world, which looks at our ancestors and our gods and our stories and songs. You move out of the spiritual world and engage with more spiritual practices or cultural practices along the lines of tapa production, drinking kava, building vakas, learning about stars, and then eventually you gather all these skills and then you move on to a new island. The way that we had done this is that we engaged over 200 kids in Canterbury, and then we've delivered similar programs to over 1,000 throughout the South Island, where we worked with community leaders and experts to come and talk about their particular task in their island. So for Niue, Mama Malo here on the right, she's Niuean. The section is all about plantations and the cultivation of food. And so she came into a classroom, talked about growing plants in Niue and a plantation as a child, looked at different plants that we have access to here in Aotearoa, and then showed the kids how to process coconuts to be able to make coconut milk. So the kids would learn a cultural component taught by a cultural expert, and then we come in and teach them all the nuts and bolts of how to build in Minecraft. So that's using things like block bench, trying to create very circular motions into square blocks like Lego. The kids then regurgitate what it is that they've learned and trying to form it into Minecraft elements or assets from what it is they've learned from their community leaders. So you'll see here's a few things that kids have made, where we talked with the Tongan community about attire, lots of different gods and stories and sea creatures and what we hold important, and the kids built in Minecraft that then gets placed into a larger game. One of the things that we saw when going out to our communities was, like technology, all things STEAM seems really scary because it is very foreign. They're seen as pālangi things to do, and again, we don't see ourselves in them. How do we expect to get our communities up and running and engaging in these vocations if they don't see themselves, but also that the terminology is so foreign to the languages in which they use? And so one of the things that we came up with working with Microsoft and Ministry of Pacific Peoples and Piki Studios was to actually develop language resources that would support our families' engagement in technology, so that hopefully these things can become conversations in the home. Pacific peoples are now in their 5th generation here in Aotearoa, and we are totally about collectivism. We have intergenerational homes, and cultural customs have a huge structure of respecting our elders and our parents. And so when your parent says to you, hey, I want you to go be a doctor, I want you to go be a lawyer or an accountant, because, traditionally these things have had big dollar signs next to them, you listen. They're not necessarily things in which our kids or our communities have passions about. But your parents, you respect your parents, and you do what your parents say. And so without the buy-in from our parents and our grandparents, we can't create pathways or the momentum in pathways to these higher paid jobs in STEAM. So we worked with Piki Studios, the Ministry of Pacific Peoples and Microsoft to develop and to translate 60 tech terms. These tech terms were vast, from things like, social term, more like emojis, to more emojis, and things like metaverse, to Bitcoin, to even as simple as the internet. We don't have these words in our languages, and we wanted to be able to create new words, which our communities could then grab onto so that they could be spoken about and spoken in everyday life. Altogether, we translated 32 new terms and 60 altogether. Doing this was incredibly difficult. My job was to kind of put everyone together in the room and manage the project. But again, as I said earlier, I am a New Zealand-born Cook Islander, and although I'm married to a Samoan, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to do tilo for my tilo for my husband is Samoan, because representation is so important. And so what we did is we got 3 language authorities that are throughout the country that specifically deal with Nganga Samoa, or the Samoan language, including the Samoan Language Commission. These people that head these associations, they are of a different generation, and some even said that they try and keep off the internet as much as possible, and that's for the grandchildren to do for them. And so there was all new foreign concepts to a lot of the people in these associations. Microsoft then gave us a lovely Pacific staff member to come in and debate with these associations over a little over a week, all of these terms, so that they could correctly translate them, not only just a transliteration, but a full translation and the understanding of the Samoan language. These terms, like here, they're all things like network, screen, hotspots, all sorts of things, and 32 of the new words that have been created are now moving into the new versions of the Samoan dictionary. So they've been complete new terms that we've managed to get into the dictionary, and that's like a really huge, exciting thing, because if our languages don't change and evolve with our current times, and they're so integral to our being, our identity, and our belonging, then we essentially just get more lost or watered down and being able to be resilient with our own communities. The biggest thing with working with multiple groups is knowing where it is that I needed to place ourselves, or where to place Tagata Moana Trust. Representation of Pacific peoples is something that we hold closely and take extremely seriously. And so coming up with frameworks to engage with multiple communities, and then in those communities, multiple communities, and multiple communities, and even debates at sometimes, was extremely important for how it is that we would be respectful, how it is that we would mitigate any kind of conflict, and keep our relationships open so that we could build huge amounts of trust. And that has really come down to finding the right people, finding people that are in that community, that that can understand why it is that you're doing something, and all of its impacts on our communities, on onto any community and how it would uplift, to then be able to go into those communities and discuss our intentions to then start to form a relationship. Creating Moana Nui Tautai Toa has been a 3-year project with multiple kids, multiple communities, and that's a really long time. Dealing with that many groups has been, I would say, the most challenging thing that I've ever done, but also the most rewarding. The key thing that we have put before anything else, before getting the world out and delivering to our community, being able to get it really into the classroom, the key thing that we have put before anything else has been going at the pace of our community and the cultural experts, what advice they have to give us, realizing the positions of power. Although it's a project that we're leading, we can only claim particular parts in terms of the worldviews in which it presents. And so it's we have to really think about our position of power and who has it, because really, if we're after knowledge or after any kind of community uptake, we don't have it. And our job is to listen, to facilitate, and to try and get the right people in the room. The key considerations when dealing with Pacific communities for anybody is the opportunities. We're the fastest, youngest growing population. We've gone from 8% to 9% in less than 5 years of the population. We have huge inequities when it comes to skills, our health system, our education, and our outcomes, yet we have still managed to contribute $21 billion annually to the economy, produce over 200,000 voluntary hours a week to Aotearoa as a community. And we have a real strength in our collectivism, which enables us to move, or not quite like the Moana Nui project, where that's not been a quick thing at all, but move quickly to wrap around individuals and support. We are a huge opportunity to this country, but we're also something that, without being looked after and being driven by our Pacific communities, for our Pacific communities, we can become 9% of a population of young people, where we have to look at all the different ways that we have to support them, because we haven't built the skills, because we haven't built the avenues, because we haven't built the pathways into a better position. Now, there's individuals that, again, succeed, but there are fundamental factors that go back to that migration visual of all these people that have come here for a better life, opportunities, that have faced discrimination and displacement due to key factors and huge amounts of factors. My advice to anybody wanting to engage with Pacific communities is to do so with a huge open heart, knowing that trust is the foundation of all relationships, and that being able to implement things together and trust each other is what will move Aotearoa and the rest of us forward. I'm going to stop with a little bit of an exercise, and And I know we've got a blank screen in front of us, so that's even more perfect. But I want everybody to close their eyes and place their hands on their stomach. And to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. From your stomach is a cord, and it's going from your seat onto the floor, wrapping through the chairs to the closest door, down the road. Keep going until you reach the ocean. Your feet propel you there, and the water gently washes over your toes. You look up into the horizon and see a big, deep blue moana ocean that keeps going, that keeps going, that keeps going. This is a place you can always be. This is your tūranga waiwai, because we've all travelled across the ocean, across the vast moana to be here today. Kia rana tātou katoa.
Kia ora. Oh, great. Thank you, Nina. That was an interesting session. Like, I don't know where to pack from the beginning to until the end. And funnily enough, the questions that I've had, like, many of the questions that I've had, you already answered. You self-question yourself, and you did most of the work yourself. But I do have maybe one or two questions until if somebody has any questions in the chat. So relevant to today's session in terms of the tech community, like, obviously Minecraft as being one of the, I think what I would define it as more of a cultural or heritage or preservation technology. Like, it's kind of how I'm seeing that from what we are saying and whatever, like, that I've experienced with some of the other work with my other children in other communities as well. Like, it's starting to become this cultural knowledge where people did not have any place to create themselves from the oral narratives or the other, like, other kind of anecdotes or stories or documents that they have as such. So, but how do you think, like, in terms of how does this technology, like, Minecraft or any other, like, open source technology plays a big impact on this cultural preservation as such? Like, and what can you share some specific examples of, like, how this is, like, that this could be a motivation for more open source tools to come out so that the kids or the other, like, the minority communities would be able to take up this and create something for the cultural revitalization or preservation in the coming years?
I mean, before working at Tagata Moana Trust, I worked at libraries and I was a Pacifica librarian. And I kept seeing this come up where our communities weren't passing on their oral traditions as rapidly as we were losing them. And that was the hugest driving force for creating a world like this, is we don't have, as Pacific peoples, really any platforms that talk about the preservation of our languages, our culture, and our identity. And that a platform like Minecraft, which is incredibly easily accessible.
Or even Blockbench. Or even Blockbench, yeah.
Blockbench has been fundamental in trying to get our kids to think about, or any of our communities to think about, how it is that they can preserve and pass down that knowledge. Now, there's fundamental issues in that, who has access to that knowledge? Is that safe where it is? how will that change things, you know, in terms of the way that we receive it or embrace and learn. But that's where trust is really important, and the right intentions. And I think that's where it has to really be driven by that community and what they want. And you're never going to be able to satisfy everyone. But if the fundamentals are there and your reasonings for why, then they could create huge amount of opportunities for anybody.
Oh, that's good. I like the way in terms of the, like, it can take a positive and the negative effect, of how you place the intention and interest. But in terms of I also resonate a lot with your pathways, this cultural norms, respecting the elders, and a couple of things. I also come from a different kind of culture where this is the norm, there's nothing, no other way. And then it kind of is perceived as something different in the Western world as such. So in terms of that, in terms of that as thing, and that I was one of the second generation literates as well, who completed college, and and also the first one who is into technology as such. So it was significant for me to be part of this journey, and people seeing that as I say, oh, I want to go into this pathway. But for the Pacifica communities, what is the current pathways that they are they're immediately seeing? Because is it based on this Minecraft or any of the things that you're seeing? Is it 3D technology, or the creator pruner, more of YouTube and TikTok and other things as such? What is that is really driving these kids to be motivated in this digital pathway?
I think more than anything, it's the creative avenue, because it's something that is a real strength to us. But we're trying to what does that really look like? There's so many ways in being creative, and that could be across any parts of the tech sector. To me, it's really too early to tell. I mean, we've been doing this for 3 years, where it's been a cultural engagement to then look at skills and how to combine those so that we can grow culturally confident kids that can take on any aspect of any future career. But the biggest interest has been in the creativity. A lot of our kids have never, they don't even know this world exists. And our job is just trying to pull out, well, it does exist, and these are the so many things that you can do. I mean, that's where going into offices or people from industry coming to visit us is really important. No matter their background, to be able to go, this is what I do for a job. So that we can then have discussions about what we're doing in our Tupai STEAM school, which we have every week, or in our in-schools programs, and how we can build interest to move kids into that. I mean, our future and what we see is so many new technologies and platforms and people that don't even know that they have the skills to do this. And they're gonna one day that's just gonna open up, and it's gonna be full of full of all these inherent indigenous knowledges that are so far rich in our kids. And I mean, and that's what it's about. I mean, that's what we're unlocking, and it will unlock huge amounts of potential for our communities.
Right. In terms of the language, the 60 tech terms that you're talking about, and I was part of the, I created the second generation Tamil school for my own communities here. So we kind of went around to create some of these tech terms, and it's really hard, and sometimes it doesn't make any sense, and you have to talk to some literary artists. So what is your hardest words to find tech equivalents that Louisa is asking?
As in how, what were the hardest words?
Hardest words for the
hardest
text
words
terms,
to translate.
Yeah, one or two.
To be really honest, I wasn't in the room for any of that.
Right. Yeah.
We put together a list of words that were from it was about 12 of us that put together a list of words, and they were just things that get used and things that could be used in different areas. But that wasn't my place. My place was to get the right people in the room that all spoke Samoan, to then have, and as well as somebody that had more institutional knowledge, particularly around the use of these words, to then discuss that out.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, my role in that was I worked with artists
Curator,
to look at imagery and the kids to get uptake.
Right.
Uptake has been the hardest thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. David Thompson is asking in terms of, is there any particular consideration when it comes to designing or writing interactive content for young Pacifica learners that Europeans might not necessarily think of, especially in Minecraft experience?
Yeah, I mean, I would instantly to that, I just think the best voices that we've ever had, communicate to anybody is the voices of the people and of their age group. That's what I would be looking at, being able to engage that community if that's what you're wanting to do. I know there's a huge push to translate lots of programs, and particularly Minecraft education resources. But for us, we go, who are you translating it for, and how are you actually able to implement that into those communities before going into the translation? So my advice would be: is find yourself a Pacific young person and talk to them about what they would like to hear and what language they're using, because it will change from where you're located in the country to what school you go to, all of those considerations.
Right. I have two more questions before we can wrap up. So one from Rachel, one from Vaughn. The Rachel is asking, like, working for a business who wants to help support or create pathways for Pacifica into tech roles, where do you suggest we start in terms of engaging with the communities?
Well, I mean, the example that I had that I can give you is the way in which we started. We did a call out and asked for community leaders in our city to come together. We're very fortunate because we've all worked in our communities and in lots of different roles, from health, all sorts of things. And so we asked our community to come, and we told them what it is that we wanted to do. And we asked them for their advice and how it is that we could engage. And from that, their advice was all positive. Nothing was, sometimes we get yelled at. But our elders in our community are the ones that we put together to then be able to give us the permissions to be able to engage. And they have kept being the people that we go to. So we have, as an organisation, a cultural committee that's South Island based that is multiple different ethnic groups on that committee and locations that we go back to regularly. And that those are people that we're then able to go and help us spread those messages, but also keep us accountable, because representation, as I said many times, is the hugest thing, and we need to make sure that that we're in a safe position to be able to engage, but also our communities are, and being able to engage equally with us.
Yeah, thank you for that. The last one is there any one exciting project you have in the horizon, like, where to from next after the Tagata Moana Trust that excites you?
Look, my biggest thing is getting this Minecraft world done. It's a completely underfunded, people resourced project that probably would have cost $1 million, and we're doing it with nothing, just pure love. But we have started. We have a Pacific Hub down at 285 Cashel Street with a makerspace in it as well. And we have started a STEAM school. So every week we have kids aged from 10 to 13 on a Tuesday, and Wednesdays ages 14 to 18, where we're hoping to be able to build greater engagement with industry. So that to me is really exciting, where we can pull our outside of the classroom, as an outside of the school, to be able to think about how it is we can engage our kids more long term, to be able to monitor and be more reactive to the things that they're showing interest in, and also the industry, people from the industry we can get in to be able to have more involvement with our community. So that's exciting.
That's
To
exciting.
Pioneer STEM
Yes.
School.
That's fantastic. That's all sounds lovely. Good luck for making that work, and we're more than happy to collaborate on everything as such. And if people want to find out about Tagata Moana Trust, reach out to Nina and in the link that Louisa has posted in the thing. But thank you so much for coming and sharing some of your stories, journeys, and things that is happening in your community. And hope to see you soon in a later time. Thank you all. Thank you all the audiences who's been patient and being part of today's session as well. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone. Cheers. Bye-bye.